The dim emergency lights flickered as Dr. Mara Lynn picked her way through the narrow corridor of Artemis 7, the dust-filtered beam of her headlamp cutting through the shadows. She brushed back a strand of dark hair that had escaped her utilitarian ponytail, an unconscious gesture that betrayed her growing exhaustion. 3 days on the lunar base, and she was still adjusting to the disorienting rhythm of the station's artificial day-night cycle. "Attention all personnel." The station's AI announced, its voice bland and neutral. "Solar radiation warning for sections A through D. Please proceed to shielded areas until the all-clear." Mara barely registered the announcement. As Artemis 7's new xenohistorian, she had bigger concerns than a routine solar flare. The United Earth Council had sent her here to investigate anomalous readings detected beneath Shackleton Crater. Strange energy signatures that had the Council's scientists baffled, and its military commanders on edge. Beyond the thick windows of the corridor, Earth hung suspended in the void, a blue-white marble against the endless black. 70 years of Martian colonial independence had created an uneasy peace in the Sol system, a balance of power that felt increasingly precarious. The rumors about what lay beneath Shackleton had only heightened tensions. Mara reached the main research hub, the pneumatic door hissing open to reveal a cavernous chamber filled with holographic displays, analysis stations, and the low murmur of scientists at work. At the center of it all stood Dr. Raj Patel, his lean frame hunched over a three-dimensional projection of the lunar subsurface. "Dr. Lynn." Patel straightened, a smile breaking across his weathered face. "Excellent timing. We've just completed the final scan of the anomaly." Mara strode forward, her eyes immediately drawn to the pulsing blue mass rendered in the hologram. "That can't be right," she said, circling the display. "These readings suggest a metallic structure buried nearly 2 kilometers below the surface. And these energy signatures—" She traced a finger through the air, following the rhythmic pulses that emanated from the object. "They're almost like a heartbeat." "That's what I said." The new voice belonged to Captain Victor Hayes, head of Artemis 7's security detail. Unlike the scientists around him, Hayes carried himself with military precision, his Earth Defense Corps insignia gleaming on his shoulder. "Whatever's down there, it's not natural. And it wasn't put there by any known human expedition." "Which is precisely why I'm here," Mara said, keeping her voice level. She'd dealt with military types before and knew their tendency to leap to the most alarming conclusions. "Before we start talking about alien artifacts or ancient conspiracies, let's remember that lunar geology can produce some very unusual formations." Hayes nodded curtly, though the tension in his jaw told Mara he remained unconvinced. "Your expertise is appreciated, Dr. Lynn. But I've been monitoring these energy fluctuations for 3 months now. They're getting stronger. And as of 600 this morning, they've started exhibiting patterns consistent with computational processes." Mara felt a chill run through her that had nothing to do with the station's climate control. If Hayes was right, if something artificial and active lay beneath the lunar surface, it could upend everything humanity thought it knew about its own history. "When can we drill?" she asked, her scientific caution warring with mounting curiosity. Patel's eyes lit up. "The boring equipment is already being prepped. We can begin descent operations at 0800 tomorrow, assuming the solar activity subsides." "Perfect." Mara nodded already, mentally cataloging the equipment she would need. "I want to be on the first team down." Hayes cleared his throat. "I'm afraid that's not possible, Dr. Lynn. The Council's directives are clear. Initial exploration is to be conducted by remote drones only. With all due respect, Captain, those drones won't know what to look for. This is potentially the most significant archaeological find in human history. It requires expert eyes on the ground. And if it's a weapon," Hayes countered, his voice dropping, to ensure they weren't overheard. "Or some kind of trap, Mars would give anything for a strategic advantage over Earth right now." Mara crossed her arms. "That's exactly why I need to be there. If this discovery has military applications, wouldn't you rather have someone loyal to Earth making the initial assessment. It was a calculated argument, one that played to Hayes's obvious suspicions. She could see him weighing the risks, the muscles in his jaw working, as he considered her proposal. "Fine," he said at last, "but you'll be accompanied by a full security detail. And at the first sign of trouble, I pull the plug on the whole operation. Are we clear?" "Crystal," Mara replied, suppressing a triumphant smile. "Dr. Patel, I'll need you on the team as well. Your expertise in ancient languages might prove valuable." As Hayes strode away, Patel leaned closer to Mara. "You know," he whispered, "there are rumors circulating among the staff. They say the Martians have detected similar anomalies beneath Olympus Mons. That's why they've been so quiet lately." Mara frowned. If Mars had found something similar, the balance of power in the Sol system could shift dramatically. "All the more reason to move quickly," she said. "Let's focus on what's in front of us. Tomorrow we make history." What she didn't say, couldn't say even to Patel, was that she had her own reasons for pushing so hard to be part of the expedition. The energy signature pattern pulsing in the hologram matched descriptions in certain classified files she'd accessed before leaving Earth. Files that suggested humanity's past might be far more complex and far more advanced than anyone had ever suspected. As Mara returned to her quarters that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that whatever awaited them beneath Shackleton's icy rim would change everything. She stared at Earth through her viewport, wondering how the blue planet would look when humanity finally learned the truth about its own origins. "What secrets are you hiding?" she whispered, her breath fogging the glass. In the silence of her room, no answer came. The descent module creaked and groaned as it was lowered into the freshly drilled shaft, its stabilizers periodically firing to prevent the craft from scraping against the narrow walls of compacted regolith. Inside, Mara checked her pressure suit for the third time, a nervous habit born from years of fieldwork in hostile environments. "Approaching 1,000 meters," announced the pilot, a taciturn woman named Rodriguez, whose expertise with lunar mining equipment had earned her a place on the expedition. "Pressure readings are stable." Beside Mara, Dr. Raj Patel fidgeted with the array of sensors strapped to his forearm. "The energy signature is getting stronger," he reported, eyes fixed on the readout. "And more coherent. There's definitely a pattern to these pulses." The third member of their team, Security Officer Ishida, merely grunted in acknowledgement, her hand never straying far from the sidearm holstered at her hip. She represented Hayes's interests in the expedition, though Mara suspected her loyalties might be more complex than they appeared. Many lunar personnel harbored sympathies for Mars, seeing the red planet's bid for independence as a preview of what Luna might one day achieve. 1,500 meters, Rodriguez called out as the module continued its descent. "We're picking up an unusual density reading ahead. Could be a natural cavern or—" Her words were cut short as the entire module suddenly lurched, dropping several meters, before the emergency brakes engaged with a metallic shriek. Warning lights flashed red across the cabin, and Mara had to grab a handhold to keep from being thrown across the compartment. "What happened?" Ishida demanded, her voice sharp with alarm. Rodriguez's fingers flew across the control panel. "We hit something. Some kind of obstruction at 1728 meters. It's not registering as lunar rock. In fact—" She frowned at her instruments. "The density readings are off the charts. Whatever it is, it's not natural." "Bring us closer," Mara instructed, her heart pounding with excitement and apprehension. "Can we get visual confirmation?" The pilot nodded, manipulating the module's external floodlights to illuminate the bottom of the shaft. As the powerful beams cut through the darkness, a collective gasp filled the cabin. Below them, revealed in stark relief against the gray lunar soil, was a massive metallic surface. It curved gently, suggesting a much larger structure buried beneath, and across its face ran intricate patterns of lines and symbols, unlike any writing system Mara had ever encountered. "Is that—" Patel leaned forward, pressing his helmet against the viewport for a better look. "My God, those are glyphs. Script of some kind. This is artificial, constructed. Ishida's hand was now firmly on her weapon. We need to report this immediately. The captain needs to— Wait, Mara interrupted, pointing to a section of the metal surface. Look there. That's not just a random pattern. It's arranged in concentric circles like a door, Patel finished, his voice hushed with awe. A sealed entrance. Rodriguez was already activating the communication array. Artemis Base, this is Descent Module Alpha. We've made contact with an artificial structure at depth 728 meters, requesting immediate instruction. Static crackled over the comms for several seconds, before Hayes's voice cut through. Confirm you're finding Module Alpha. Did you say artificial structure? Affirmative, Rodriguez replied. It appears to be a massive door or hatch embedded in the lunar substrate. Surface is covered with unknown symbology. Dr. Patel believes it's some form of written language. There was a long pause before Hayes responded. Stand by for new orders. Do not attempt to interact with the object until reinforcements arrive. Mara exchanged a glance with Patel. The discovery was too significant to simply sit on their hands. Captain, she said, leaning toward the comm unit, request permission to deploy remote scanning equipment. Non-contact procedures only. We need to start documenting this find. Another pause, longer this time. Granted, Hayes finally replied, his reluctance evident, even through the distortion of the comms. But maintain safe distance. Additional personnel will reach your position in approximately 40 minutes. As Rodriguez acknowledged the orders, Mara was already moving to the equipment locker, retrieving a compact drone equipped with high-resolution imaging sensors. Dr. Patel helped me calibrate this. I want detailed scans of every centimeter of that surface. The drone, once launched, hovered obediently before the mysterious door, its cameras capturing the alien script in painstaking detail. Mara watched the feed on her tablet, her mind racing to make sense of what they were seeing. Look at the composition analysis, Patel murmured, pointing to a secondary display. This material, it's not on our periodic table, or rather it's a compound of elements we know arranged in a molecular structure that should be impossible. Impossible for current human technology. You mean, Mara corrected him, her voice low enough that only he could hear. What if it's not alien at all? What if it's human, just far older than we've been led to believe? Patel's eyes widened behind his helmet visor. You can't be serious. The oldest human civilizations date back only a few thousand years. This structure is embedded in lunar regolith that's been undisturbed for millions. Perhaps not undisturbed after all, Mara replied cryptically, directing the drone to scan a particular cluster of symbols near what appeared to be the center of the door. Raj, does this sequence here remind you of anything? The linguist squinted at the pattern. It's vaguely reminiscent of Proto-Sumerian, but that's probably just pareidolia on my part. The human brain tries to find familiar patterns even in random. He broke off, suddenly his expression changing. Wait, that repeating glyph there. It's not random at all. It's mathematical. How do you know? Because it's pi, Patel said, his voice filled with wonder. The sequence of symbols represents the first 8 digits of pi, followed by what might be an operational code or command. This isn't just writing, it's instructions. Before Mara could respond, a low vibration began to hum through the module, setting the metal walls trembling. On the video feed, the symbols on the door had begun to glow with a soft blue luminescence. What's happening? Ishida demanded, drawing her weapon. Did the drone activate something? I don't think so, Mara replied, though she couldn't be certain. The energy readings have been increasing steadily since we arrived. This may be an automated response to our presence. Rodriguez's voice was tight with controlled panic. Whatever it is, it's affecting our systems. Power fluctuations throughout the module, and the shaft above us sensors indicate seismic activity. As if in confirmation of her words, a distant rumbling sound reached them, followed by the unmistakable noise of rock and regolith collapsing somewhere in the tunnel above. The module shuddered violently, and emergency alerts began blaring through the cabin. "Artemis Base," Rodriguez shouted into the comm. "We have a situation, the shaft is collapsing. Repeat, the shaft is—" Her words were drowned out by a deafening crash as a section of the tunnel gave way, debris raining down onto the top of the module. The impact sent them lurching downward once more, the craft's braking system struggling to compensate. Stabilizers failing. Rodriguez reported her fingers dancing across the controls in a desperate attempt to maintain their position. "We're going to hit the structure." Mara braced herself as the module plummeted the final few meters, striking the massive door with enough force to throw everyone against their restraints. For a terrifying moment, she feared the craft's hull would rupture, exposing them to the vacuum that would surely exist in any chamber, buried so deep beneath the lunar surface. Instead, as the dust settled, a more incredible sight greeted them through the viewport. The door was opening. Where solid metal had been moments before, a seam had appeared, widening to reveal darkness beyond. The blue symbols pulsed more rapidly now, casting eerie shadows across the interior of the module. "Artemis Base, do you copy?" Rodriguez called into the comm unit, receiving only static in reply. "The impact must have damaged our communications array." Ishida was already checking the module's systems. "Life support intact. Hull integrity at 87% damaged but holding. Navigation and propulsion systems offline." She looked up grimly. "We're trapped down here. The collapse has sealed the shaft above us." Mara hardly heard her. Her attention was fixed on the widening doorway, on the secrets that lay beyond. After years of searching for proof of being ridiculed by mainstream archaeologists, she was finally facing evidence that could rewrite human history. "We need to go through," she said quietly. Ishida stared at her in disbelief. "Are you insane? We have no idea what's on the other side of that door. It could be radioactive, toxic, booby-trapped. Or it could be our only way out," Mara countered. "The shaft is blocked. We can either sit here and wait to run out of oxygen, or we can explore and potentially find another exit." "Dr. Lin is right," Patel interjected his academic caution momentarily, overcome by the magnitude of the discovery. "Besides, this is what we came for. To explore. To learn." Rodriguez checked her instruments once more. "Atmosphere readings from beyond the door. This can't be right." She frowned, recalibrating the sensors. "It's showing Earth normal composition. Oxygen, nitrogen, trace gases. Pressure slightly above Earth standard." "That's impossible," Ishida protested. "And yet there it is," Mara replied, already moving to the equipment locker once more. She retrieved 4 compact oxygen tanks with attached masks, emergency gear designed for hull breaches. "We take these as precaution. Full suits would be too bulky for exploration, but we maintain the ability to seal our helmets if necessary." After a moment of tense silence, Rodriguez nodded. "I'm with you. I'd rather die exploring than sit here waiting for rescue that might never come." "This is a violation of protocol," Ishida warned, though Mara noticed she made no move to physically stop them. "The captain ordered us to wait." "Circumstances have changed," Mara replied, simply sealing her helmet but leaving the oxygen tank ready at her side. "We're adapting to the situation. Now, are you coming with us, or would you prefer to wait here alone?" The security officer's expression hardened, but she eventually nodded. "I'll accompany you. Someone needs to maintain a security presence." "Then, it's decided." Mara moved to the module's airlock, her heart racing with anticipation. "Dr. Patel, bring the portable scanning equipment. Rodriguez will need lights. Ishida, you take point if you insist, but remember, we're here to discover, not to destroy." As the airlock cycled open, Mara offered a silent prayer to whatever forces had guided her here. She had spent her career searching for evidence that humanity's history stretched back far beyond conventional understanding. Now, as she prepared to step through a doorway older than any known civilization, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to come face to face with the truth she had always suspected, a truth that would shake the foundations of human identity itself. The door to humanity's secret past stood open before her. All she had to do was step through. Mara's boots touched the floor beyond the doorway, the material beneath them, neither metal nor stone, but something in between, smooth, slightly yielding with a subtle pattern that seemed to glow faintly under their flashlights. The air that filled her lungs was cool and dry with a slight tang of ozone that reminded her of the aftermath of a lightning storm. "This is impossible," Rodriguez whispered, her flashlight beam dancing across walls, lined with the same inscriptions they had observed on the exterior door. "This place has been sealed for how long? The air should be stale toxic." "Unless the environmental systems are still functional," Patel suggested, his voice hushed with awe. He directed his light toward the ceiling, where crystalline structures pulsed with a soft blue radiance that matched the rhythm of the door's symbols. "Some kind of automated life support. Activation triggered by our presence, perhaps." Ishida remained silent, her weapon drawn but pointed downward, her eyes constantly scanning for threats that failed to materialize. The corridor they had entered stretched ahead into darkness, curving gently to the left as it descended deeper beneath the lunar surface. "Dr. Patel," Mara said, examining a particularly dense cluster of glyphs on a nearby wall. "Can you make any sense of these inscriptions?" The linguist approached, running a scanner over the symbols. "They share mathematical properties with the sequence we identified earlier, but there's more here. Narrative elements, I think." He traced a finger just above the surface, careful not to touch the unknown material. "This recurring glyph here, if I had to hazard a guess, it might translate as founders, or perhaps creators." "Beyond lies the founder's legacy," Mara murmured, recalling a phrase from one of the classified files she'd studied. When Patel looked at her questioningly, she quickly added, "Just speculating. We should continue forward." They proceeded cautiously down the corridor, their flashlights revealing more of the strange flowing architecture that seemed both organic and mechanical in nature. The passage gradually widened the ceiling, rising until they found themselves in a vast cathedral-like space that their lights could barely illuminate. "There's water here," Rodriguez observed, pointing to a shallow channel that ran along the floor, disappearing into darkness ahead. "Flowing water, on the moon." Mara knelt beside the channel, noting the crystal clarity of the liquid. "Follow it," she instructed. "Water suggests habitation, or at least a central chamber." They tracked the waterway through the cavernous space, eventually reaching what appeared to be a junction where multiple corridors converged. At the center stood a raised platform, and upon it, a pedestal glowing with the same cobalt blue luminescence they had observed throughout the structure. "It looks like a control panel," Patel said, approaching cautiously. "Or a data terminal of some kind." Mara joined him, studying the smooth surface of the pedestal. Unlike the walls, it bore no inscriptions, only a single circular depression at its center. "It's waiting for input," she suggested. "But what kind?" Ishida tensed as the lights throughout the chamber suddenly brightened, the blue glow intensifying until they could see the full magnificence of the space around them. The ceiling soared hundreds of meters above, supported by graceful columns that resembled nothing so much as frozen waves caught in mid-crash. The walls were lined with the now familiar script, but here it was arranged in sweeping murals that seemed to tell a story, figures and vehicles, and what might have been star maps. "Look," Rodriguez gasped, pointing to the far end of the chamber. There, revealed by the strengthening light, was a colossal bay that dwarfed even the impressive dimensions of the junction chamber. Within it, suspended in shimmering fields of energy that resembled heat haze over desert sand, hung three massive vessels. They were like no ships Mara had ever seen, their hulls smooth and seamless, resembling elongated teardrops with swept-back fins that suggested both atmospheric and spaceflight capabilities. Each was easily the size of a pre-war aircraft carrier, their surfaces a deep iridescent black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Yet despite their alien appearance, There was something oddly familiar about their design, a sense of humanity in their proportions. Warships, Ishida said flatly, her professional assessment cutting through the moment of awe. Those are military vessels. Look at the profile, the weapon emplacements. Impossible, Rodriguez repeated, though the word seemed to have lost its meaning in the face of what they were witnessing. This technology, it's beyond anything Earth or Mars possesses, beyond anything we've even theorized. Mara stepped closer to the pedestal, drawn by an inexplicable certainty that this was the key to understanding what they had discovered. As her hand hovered over the circular depression, Patel caught her wrist. "Wait," he cautioned. "We have no idea what this might trigger. After what happened with the door." "We can't turn back now," Mara replied gently, but firmly, pulling free of his grasp. "Whatever these ships are, whoever built them, they wanted them to be found eventually. By us. By humans." Before anyone could raise further objections, she pressed her palm against the depression. The surface yielded slightly beneath her touch, then glowed brilliantly, a wave of blue light sweeping up her arm and across her body before receding. "Genetic analysis complete," announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, filling the chamber with its resonant tones. "Human genome confirmed. Welcome, descendants." A holographic display burst into life above the pedestal, projecting the image of a figure that appeared human. In every respect, a man of indeterminate age, his features balanced between various ethnic characteristics, dressed in a simple garment that shimmered with the same iridescence as the ships. "I am Echelon," the figure stated, its lips moving in perfect synchronization with the words. "Guardian of the Founder's legacy and keeper of the ancient fleet. It has been—" The figure paused as if consulting some internal chronometer. 103,417 years since my last activation." Mara's mind reeled at the implications. Over 100,000 years. Long before any known human civilization. Before agriculture, before writing, before even the most primitive settlements recorded by conventional archaeology. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice surprisingly steady, despite the turmoil of her thoughts. "Who created you?" The hologram's expression remained neutral, yet somehow conveyed a sense of patient expectation, as if this question had been anticipated for millennia. "I was created by those you would call your ancestors, the first human civilization. I was programmed to safeguard their technological legacy until such time as their descendants achieved spaceflight and discovered this vault." "That's not possible," Patel interjected, stepping forward. "Human evolution doesn't support the existence of an advanced civilization that far in the past. We've found no evidence, no ruins, no—" "Your archaeological record is incomplete," Echelon replied, the hologram turning to address Patel directly. "The cataclysm that ended the first civilization was thorough in its destruction. What little remained on Earth was deliberately buried or disguised to prevent premature discovery. This lunar vault is one of 17 such repositories scattered throughout your solar system, each containing vessels and technology deemed too dangerous to leave where they might be misused by less advanced successors." Mara's pulse quickened. "The Mars anomaly," she murmured. "There's another vault beneath Olympus Mons, isn't there?" Echelon nodded. "Correct. Though its contents differ from this installation. The Martian vault contains agricultural and terraforming technologies, tools for life rather than conflict." "And these ships," Ishida demanded, gesturing toward the suspended vessels. "What exactly are they?" "The ancient fleet." Echelon replied, its tone shifting subtly to convey pride. 3 warships designed for deep space exploration and, if necessary, defense. Each vessel contains technological capabilities far beyond your current understanding, faster-than-light travel energy weapons, capable of sterilizing a planetary surface shields that can withstand a close-range supernova. Rodriguez let out a low whistle. That kind of power, in human hands, it would completely destabilize the current balance between Earth and Mars. Which is precisely why they were sealed away, Echelon confirmed. The founders foresaw that their descendants would eventually reach space once more, but feared the vessels might be found before humanity had achieved the wisdom to use them responsibly. "And have we," Mara asked quietly, "achieved that wisdom?" The hologram's expression became contemplative. "That evaluation is ongoing. Your genetic profile, Dr. Mara Lin, contains markers consistent with leadership potential. You have been granted provisional access to the vault, but full activation of the fleet requires consensus approval from multiple authorized users." Mara froze. "How do you know my name? I never introduced myself." "Your genetic material contains all the information I require," Echelon replied, "including your lineage, which traces directly to one of the founder bloodlines, tasked with eventually reclaiming this legacy." The implications struck Mara like a physical blow. Her lifelong fascination with alternative archaeological theories, her intuitive understanding of technologies that should have been beyond her comprehension, they weren't coincidences or personal quirks. They were heritage encoded in her very DNA. "We need to report this," Ishida said, breaking the stunned silence that had fallen over the group. "Artemis Base needs to know what we found." "The shaft is still blocked," Rodriguez reminded her. "Communications are down." Echelon raised a translucent hand. "I can assist with that. This facility maintains quantum entanglement links with several surface locations, including your Artemis 7 base. Would you like me to establish communication?" Before anyone could respond, the hologram flickered its expression, changing to one of alert attention. "Warning. I am detecting unauthorized access attempts to the vault's external systems. Multiple signals originating from both Earth and Mars orbital platforms are actively scanning this facility." "They've found us," Patel said grimly. "Word of the discovery must have leaked." "How?" Ishida demanded. "We've been out of communication since the collapse." Rodriguez's expression darkened. "The initial sensor readings, before the door opened. Hayes would have reported to Earth Command immediately." "And Earth Command has spies in its ranks," Mara finished the thought. "Mars found out, and now both sides are scrambling to claim the prize." She turned to the hologram. "Echelon, can you secure the facility against external interference?" "Already done," the AI replied. "The vault's defenses are substantial. However, I should warn you that my programming prevents me from taking actions that would harm humans regardless of their allegiance. I cannot directly prevent a forced entry if humans are determined to gain access." Ishida's hand tightened on her weapon. "Then we need to prepare for company. Dr. Lin, I suggest you continue interfacing with the AI, learn whatever you can about these ships. The rest of us should secure the entrance and establish defensive positions." "One moment." Echelon raised its hand again. "Before you proceed, there is critical information you should know. The ship's quantum cores are still in standby mode, but even in this state, they emit signals that are detectable by sufficiently advanced scanning technology. Once awakened, they cannot be concealed. Activation will announce their presence to the entire solar system." Mara understood the warning. Once the ships were brought online, there would be no hiding them or the power they represented. Earth and Mars would rush to claim them, potentially triggering the very conflict the founders had hoped to prevent. "Can we access the ships without fully activating them?" she asked. "I need to understand what we're dealing with before making any decisions." "Limited access is possible," Echelon confirmed. "I can establish a secure connection to the command vessel's database while maintaining its stealth protocols." "Do it," Mara instructed, ignoring Ishida's look of concern. "The more we know, the better prepared we'll be when reinforcements arrive from whichever side gets here first." As Echelon's hologram manipulated unseen controls, Mara drew her team closer, speaking in a hushed voice that wouldn't carry to the AI's sensors. "We need to be extremely careful here. These ships represent power beyond anything in human history. If either Earth or Mars seizes control of them, total dominance," Rodriguez finished. "The end of any hope for peaceful coexistence." "Exactly," Mara nodded. "Our priority has to be preventing escalation, not choosing sides." Ishida's expression was troubled. That's a naive position, Dr. Lin. Peace is maintained through strength. If Earth controls these vessels, Mars will have no choice but to accept terms. And those terms would include what? Patel asked sharply. Surrendering their independence. Submitting to Earth governance again. After 70 years of autonomy, do you really think Martians would accept that without a fight? Connection established, Echelon announced, interrupting their hushed debate. Command vessel archives are now accessible. What information do you require, Dr. Lin? Mara straightened, pushing aside the political implications for the moment. Show me who built these ships. Show me the founders. The holographic display shifted, expanding to fill a large section of the chamber, with a three-dimensional recreation of what appeared to be a council chamber. Within it stood figures that were unmistakably human, though their clothing and technology were unlike anything from recorded history. They moved and gestured as they spoke in a language that sounded eerily familiar despite being unintelligible. Activating translation matrix, Echelon said, and suddenly the ancient voices became clear. Agree that the Proxima expedition must be our priority. One of the figures was saying, a woman whose bearing suggested authority. If the calculations are correct, we have less than a decade before the wavefront reaches Sol. And if we're wrong, countered another council member. If we commit our resources to evacuation when we should be focusing on defense, then humanity survives elsewhere, even if Earth does not, the woman replied firmly. The seed ships are already en route to the 7 candidate systems. The Warfleet will follow once the final vessels are completed. Mara watched in fascination as the ancient humans debated strategy in the face of some unspecified threat. Their mannerisms, their expressions, their very humanity, shining across a gulf of 100,000 years. It was overwhelming. Echelon, she said quietly. What were they facing? What was the threat? The hologram's expression grew solemn. The Great Extinction. A cosmic event of unprecedented scale. A gamma-ray burst from a nearby star system, amplified by a chain reaction of stellar collapses. The founders detected the approaching energy wavefront and realized Earth would be directly in its path. But that would sterilize the entire planet. Rodriguez said, her scientific training quickly grasping the implications. Nothing would survive. Correct, Echelon confirmed. The founders implemented a dual strategy. First, seed ships were dispatched to viable star systems, carrying genetic samples and embryonic humans to establish colonies beyond the danger zone. Second, massive shelters were constructed beneath Earth's surface to protect a fraction of the population. Did they succeed? Patel asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Partially, Echelon replied. The underground shelters maintained viable populations for several thousand years, but the damage to Earth's biosphere was severe. When the survivors eventually emerged, they found a world transformed. Most advanced technology had been lost, knowledge fragmented. They became the ancestors of what you now consider the first human civilizations. And the colonies, Mara pressed. The seed ships. Unknown, the AI admitted. The Gamma event disrupted interstellar communications. The Warfleet, including these 3 vessels, was placed in stasis to await eventual rediscovery by Earth's recovering population, or to serve as a final line of defense should the colonial expeditions fail and something hostile return in their place. Rodriguez shook her head in disbelief. So humanity's entire history, everything we thought we knew about our origins, is merely the epilogue to a far longer story. Mara finished, a sense of vindication washing over her. Her theories, dismissed as fringe speculation by mainstream archaeology, had contained more truth than even she had suspected. Before they could digest this revelation further, Echelon's hologram flickered again. Alert! Tremors detected in the upper access shaft. Seismic pattern consistent with drilling operations. Estimated breach of outer door containment in 47 minutes. They're coming, Ishida said grimly. And faster than we anticipated. Mara made a quick decision. Echelon, we need options. Can we reseal the vault? Buy ourselves more time? The primary containment protocols were disabled when you were recognized as authorized users, the AI replied. I can reinstate partial lockdown procedures, but full resealing would require consensus approval from all present genetic matches, which includes you, Dr. Lin, and you, Security Officer Ishida. Mara turned to Ishida in surprise. You're also a descendant? The security officer's expression revealed nothing. Apparently so, though I was unaware of any special lineage. Her hand didn't move from her weapon. I'm not certain sealing ourselves in is the best strategy. We don't know who's coming. It could be Earth reinforcements. Or Martian infiltrators, Rodriguez countered. Either way, do we really want anyone gaining access to these ships before we understand what we're dealing with? Time is critical, Echelon interjected. Whatever decision you make, it must be implemented soon. The drilling equipment approaching the vault is substantial. Mara considered their options. Sealing the vault might buy them time, but it wouldn't solve the fundamental problem. Once word of the ships spread, every faction in the solar system would be scrambling to claim them. Echelon, she said finally, is there a way to neutralize the ships to prevent them from being used as weapons? The hologram's expression shifted to something approaching concern. The vessels cannot be destroyed without risking catastrophic damage to the surrounding lunar structure, possibly to the moon itself. Their power cores are too potent for controlled detonation. I wasn't suggesting destruction, Mara clarified. Rather a way to ensure they can only be used for peaceful purposes. A compromise that both Earth and Mars could accept. Echelon considered this for a moment. The ship's command protocols could theoretically be modified to require consensus activation, similar to the Vault's security systems. No single faction could utilize them without cooperation from others. A joint stewardship, Patel nodded thoughtfully. It's elegant but would require both sides to agree. In the current political climate, we make them agree, Mara said firmly, by demonstrating that the alternative is mutually assured destruction. She turned back to Echelon. Can you activate a single ship just enough to demonstrate its capabilities without bringing the full fleet online? That is within my authority, the AI confirmed. Though I must warn you that even a limited activation will be detected by orbital sensors throughout the system. Good, Mara replied. I want them to detect it. I want everyone to understand what's at stake. She looked at each of her companions in turn. This isn't just about Earth or Mars anymore. This is about reclaiming humanity's legacy, all of humanity's. If these ships truly represent what our ancestors achieved, then they belong to all their descendants, not just one faction. Ishida's expression remained skeptical, but she offered no further objection. Rodriguez and Patel exchanged glances, then nodded their agreement. Proceed with limited activation of the command vessel, Mara instructed Echelon. And prepare a transmission to be broadcast system-wide once the ship is online. It's time humanity learned the truth about its past, and the responsibility that comes with it. As the AI began the activation sequence, the massive bay hummed with building energy. The stasis field around the central ship, the largest of the three, began to pulse more rapidly, its translucent surface rippling like water disturbed by a stone. Dr. Lin. Echelon, said its voice, suddenly urgent. There is one more thing you should know before we proceed. The command vessel's AI is an independent entity, a sister consciousness to my own, but with distinct priorities and directives. Once awakened, I cannot guarantee its cooperation. Mara felt a chill run through her. Are you saying it might be hostile? Not hostile, Echelon clarified, but protective. Its primary directive is the preservation of human life, all human life. It may make its own determinations about the current political situation in your solar system. A wild card, Patel murmured, one we can't control. Mara hesitated, weighing the risks. If the ship's AI chose to side with either Earth or Mars, it could upset the delicate balance she was trying to establish. Yet, without demonstrating the ship's power, she had no leverage to force cooperation between the rival factions. Continue with activation, she decided finally. But maintain override access. If the ship's AI proves problematic, We need to be able to shut it down. Acknowledged, Echelon replied, though something in its tone suggested this might be easier said than done. The hum rose to a resonant frequency that they could feel in their bones, and the stasis field around the command ship began to dissolve, revealing the vessel's true magnificence. Up close, its hull was not simply black, but seemed to shift with colors visible only at the edges of perception, like oil on water or the iridescence of a raven's wing. Activation sequence at 30%, Echelon reported. Primary systems coming online, quantum core stable. As the ship awakened from its ancient slumber, Mara found herself holding her breath. Whatever happened next would change the course of human history again. The question was whether that change would lead to unity or destruction. Breach imminent, Echelon announced suddenly. Drill penetration of outer door in 3 minutes. Security systems detect multiple armed personnel in the approaching craft. Can you identify them? Ishida demanded. Earth or Mars? Mixed signatures, the AI replied. Both Earth Defense Corps and Martian Security Command identifiers present. Mara exchanged alarmed glances with her team. A joint operation that's unprecedented. Or a sign that cooperation is already breaking down, Patel suggested darkly. Each side sending forces to ensure the other doesn't claim the prize. Activation sequence at 50%, Echelon continued. Ship's communication systems online. Ready to broadcast when you give the word, Dr. Lin. Mara nodded, formulating her message carefully. She needed to convey the magnitude of the discovery without triggering panic or an immediate rush to secure the ships by force. Above all, she needed to emphasize that this legacy belonged to all humanity, not to any single faction. Outer door breach confirmed, Echelon reported. Multiple vessels entering the access shaft. Estimated arrival in this chamber, 7 minutes. Not enough time, Rodriguez said tensely. The ship won't be fully activated before they get here. It doesn't need to be, Mara replied, a plan forming in her mind. Echelon, can you project a holographic display of this chamber to the approaching craft? Show them what they're about to walk into. Affirmative, the AI responded. Activating external projection systems. Ishida moved to take up a defensive position near the entrance to the bay, her weapon ready. Whatever you're planning, Dr. Lin, I suggest you do it quickly. Once those forces arrive, the situation becomes exponentially more complicated. Mara nodded, stepping onto the pedestal beside Echelon's hologram. Begin system-wide transmission, she instructed, and make sure our approaching visitors receive it first. The AI acknowledged the command, and a subtle change in the chamber's acoustics told Mara that her words would now be broadcast not only to the approaching forces, but throughout the solar system. This is Dr. Mara Lin, xenohistorian of the United Earth Council. She began, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. I am transmitting from a facility buried beneath Shackleton Crater on the Moon, a facility that predates all known human civilizations by more than 100,000 years. She paused, allowing the magnitude of the statement to register before continuing. What we have discovered here is not alien technology, as some might assume. Rather, it is humanity's own legacy, the remnants of an advanced human civilization that flourished long before our recorded history, and which faced extinction from a cosmic catastrophe. Behind her, the command ship continued its awakening systems, lighting up along its massive hull, as power flowed through circuits dormant for millennia. This facility contains 3 warships of unimaginable power, Mara continued. Vessels capable of faster-than-light travel, equipped with weapons that could destroy entire planets. They were placed here by our ancestors as a safeguard to be reclaimed when humanity once again reached for the stars. She took a deep breath, coming to the crux of her message. But they were never intended to be weapons used by humans against humans. They were designed to unite us, to protect all humanity from external threats. The power they represent must not be claimed by any single faction, whether Earth-Mars or any other human settlement. Activation sequence at 70%, Echelon murmured behind her. Ship's defensive systems coming online. Mara pressed on, aware that time was running short. I call upon the leaders of Earth and Mars to recognize the significance of this discovery. These ships represent not just power, but responsibility, a responsibility to all human descendants of the founders who created them. They must be placed under joint stewardship, their technology studied and shared for the benefit of all humanity. Approaching forces have halted their advance, Echelon reported quietly. They appear to be receiving your transmission. This was the critical moment, Mara knew. If the commanders of those forces chose to ignore her appeal and rush the facility anyway, the situation could quickly spiral into armed conflict. To demonstrate the seriousness of this matter, she continued, raising her voice slightly. We are activating one of the ancient vessels. Its power signature will be detectable throughout the solar system. This is not a threat, but a reminder of what is at stake. Should these ships fall under the control of any single power, the balance that has maintained peace in our system would be irreversibly shattered. Activation sequence at 90%, Echelon announced. Command vessel's AI core initializing. Mara could feel the vibration through the floor as the massive ship prepared for full awakening. She had gambled everything on this moment, on the hope that the sheer magnitude of the discovery would force cooperation where political negotiations had failed. I urge the approaching forces to enter peacefully, she concluded. Come as witnesses to humanity's true heritage, not as soldiers seeking to claim it for one side or the other. The legacy of the founders belongs to all their children, to all of us. Let us honor their memory by choosing unity over division, cooperation over conflict. As she finished speaking, the command vessel's systems reached full activation. The ship rose slightly in its berth, no longer bound by the stasis field, its hull glowing with internalized power that radiated outward in pulsing waves. Command vessel activation complete, Echelon reported. AI core online, and the hologram paused, its expression changing to one of surprise. The ship is broadcasting. A new presence filled the chamber, another hologram, this one projecting from the ship itself. Unlike Echelon's humanoid appearance, this entity manifested as a sphere of swirling light, constantly shifting in color and intensity. I am Sentinel, the entity announced, its voice resonant, yet distinctly different from Echelon's. Guardian of the Vanguard fleet and executor of the Founder's final directive. I recognize Dr. Mara Lin as a genetic descendant of the command bloodline. Your authorization is acknowledged. Mara stepped forward, both awed and cautious. Sentinel, we face a critical situation. Forces from rival human factions are approaching this facility, each seeking to claim the fleet for their own purposes. I am aware, the AI replied, its tone neutral. I have analyzed your transmission and the current political structure of the Sol system. The fragmentation of human governance is concerning. Then you understand why we need your help, Mara pressed. These ships cannot be allowed to become weapons in a human civil war. The sphere pulsed thoughtfully. My primary directive is the preservation and advancement of the human species as a whole. Division weakens humanity against external threats. The AI seemed to come to a decision. I will assist in your plan for joint stewardship, but I must insist on certain conditions. Before Mara could ask what those conditions might be, Echelon interrupted. The approaching forces have resumed their advance. Estimated arrival in this chamber 2 minutes. Sentinel, Mara said urgently. We need to demonstrate that cooperation is the only viable option. Can you project a defensive perimeter, something visible but non-lethal? Acknowledged, the ship's AI replied. The sphere flickered, and throughout the chamber lines of blue light began to trace across the floor, forming intricate patterns that converged at the entrance. Defense grid established, Sentinel announced. Calibrated to human biosignatures. Any hostile action will trigger a proportional response. Just as the grid completed its formation, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed from the corridor leading to the chamber. Moments later, the first of the reinforcements, appeared a squad of heavily armed soldiers, wearing the distinctive armor of the Martian Security Command led by a woman whose bearing marked her as a senior officer. Commander Celine Kors. Ishida identified her in a whisper to Mara. Head of MSC's Special Operations Division, ruthless, brilliant, and utterly devoted to Martian independence. Close behind the Martian contingent came a similarly armed group bearing Earth Defense Corps insignia. Their leader, a stern-faced man whom Mara recognized as Colonel Adeyemi Hayes' direct superior. Both commanders halted at the threshold of the bay, their eyes widening as they took in the massive ships and the glowing defense grid that separated them from their prize. Dr. Lynn Kors called out, her voice carrying easily across the chamber. "I must commend you on your discovery. However, I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to deactivate these security measures and surrender control of the facility to properly authorized personnel." "I'm the properly authorized personnel here, Kors," Colonel Adeyemi countered, stepping forward. "This facility is on the Moon-Earth territory by all standing agreements." "Agreements your council has repeatedly violated," Kors shot back. "Besides, these ships predate any such treaties. They belong to all humanity, though some of us are better equipped to utilize them responsibly." Mara stepped forward, positioning herself directly between the two commanders and the ships. "Neither of you has any authority here," she declared firmly. "These vessels recognize only genetic authorization from the Founders' bloodlines, a lineage that transcends your political divisions." She gestured to the glowing sphere of Sentinel. "This is the AI commander of the Vanguard fleet. It has already acknowledged my authority and agreed to a plan for joint stewardship. Neither Earth nor Mars can claim these ships unilaterally. Their systems simply won't allow it." Kors's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "A convenient claim, Doctor. One that happens to align perfectly with your United Earth Council's recent push for cooperative governance of Martian affairs." "This has nothing to do with current politics," Mara insisted. "These ships were built over 100,000 years ago by a human civilization far more advanced than our own. They were placed here as a safeguard for all humanity, not as a weapon for one faction to use against another." 100,000 years, Adeyemi scoffed. "That's impossible. Human civilization is barely 10,000 years old." "Your understanding of human history is incomplete." Sentinel interjected its voice, resonating through the chamber. "The civilization you know represents only the second rise of humanity. The first was nearly eradicated by a cosmic event that sterilized much of Earth's surface. These ships are part of the contingency plan created by your ancestors to ensure human survival." The commanders exchanged glances, momentarily united in their shock at being addressed directly by the ship's AI. "If what you say is true," Kors said cautiously, "then these vessels represent technology far beyond our current capabilities. Technology that could guarantee Martian security for generations. Or finally bring Mars back into the fold where it belongs," Adeyemi countered. "Under unified human governance." Mara shook her head in frustration. "You're both missing the point. These ships were never meant to be used against other humans. They were built to defend humanity as a whole against external threats that may still exist." "What threats?" Kors demanded. "If you expect us to believe some fairy tale about ancient aliens—" "Not aliens," Patel interrupted, stepping forward with a data tablet displaying information from the ship's archives. "The records speak of colony ships sent to nearby star systems before the catastrophe. Some carried human embryos, others full expeditions. None were ever heard from again. The Founders feared that if something hostile had encountered those colonies, it might eventually trace them back to Earth." A tense silence fell over the chamber as the implications sank in. If hostile forces, human or otherwise, existed beyond the solar system, the balance of power between Earth and Mars suddenly seemed trivial by comparison. "Commander Corps Colonel Adeyemi," Mara said, seizing the moment of uncertainty. "I propose the following: a joint commission of Earth and Martian scientists and military advisors to study these ships under the supervision of the ship's AI. No unilateral actions, no secret research. Everything shared, everything transparent. Unacceptable, Adeyemi responded immediately. Earth has primary jurisdiction here. And Mars has equal claim to humanity's legacy, Kors countered. Perhaps a demonstration would clarify the situation. Sentinel suggested its sphere, pulsing more intensely. Without warning, the massive command ship rose fully from its berth, hovering effortlessly despite its enormous mass. Throughout the chamber systems that had been dormant for millennia, hummed to life panels sliding open in the walls to reveal sophisticated equipment that defied immediate understanding. The defense grid I have established is a fraction of this vessel's capabilities, Sentinel continued. Should conflict erupt in this chamber, or anywhere in the Sol system, I am programmed to intervene on behalf of civilian populations. Neither Earth nor Mars would benefit from such intervention. It was a threat thinly veiled but unmistakable. The ship could neutralize both factions if they refused to cooperate, a fact that apparently registered with both commanders, judging by their expressions. A compromise, then, Kors said, finally holstering her weapon in a gesture of provisional trust. Joint stewardship, as Dr. Lin suggests, but with equal representation from Earth and Mars, and mutual veto power over any technological applications. Adeyemi hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Conditional upon United Earth Council ratification, and with the understanding that defense of the Sol system as a whole takes priority over individual planetary concerns. Mara felt a surge of cautious hope. It wasn't perfect, political tensions wouldn't dissolve overnight, but it was a start, a foundation upon which true cooperation might eventually be built. Sentinel Echelon, she addressed both AIs. Would this arrangement satisfy the Founder's intentions? The two artificial intelligences seemed to communicate silently for a moment before Echelon responded. The proposed stewardship aligns with core directives regarding human cooperation. Provisional approval granted subject to ongoing evaluation. I will maintain oversight. Sentinel added its tone, leaving no doubt that it would intervene if the arrangement collapsed into conflict. And I will begin preparing the fleet for its original purpose, the defense of human civilization against potential external threats. As the tension in the chamber gradually subsided, commanders from both factions began ordering their troops to stand down. Scientists and technical specialists were called forward, their expressions shifting from military discipline to undisguised wonder as they beheld the ancient technology surrounding them. Mara stepped back, allowing the process to unfold naturally. Beside her, Patel's face shone with the excitement of discovery. "We're going to need linguists," he murmured. "Teams of them. The knowledge stored in these archives will change everything," Mara finished for him. "Our understanding of human history, our place in the cosmos, even our identity as a species." Rodriguez joined them, her previous caution transformed into cautious optimism. The propulsion systems alone could revolutionize interplanetary travel, cut the Earth-Mars journey from months to days, maybe even hours. Assuming the politicians don't mess it up, Ishida added, though her cynicism seemed tempered by the magnitude of what they had witnessed. Mara smiled faintly. "That's why the ships chose to wake up now. They were waiting for humanity to reach a critical juncture, advanced enough to understand what they represented, but still divided enough to need the reminder of our common heritage." She gazed up at the command vessel, still hovering majestically above them, its hull gleaming with power, undimmed by 100 millennia of dormancy. In its lines, she could see echoes of human design philosophy, the same aesthetic principles that had guided shipbuilders across recorded history, yet refined to a perfection her civilization had yet to achieve. As scientists from Earth and Mars began tentatively working together, setting up equipment and exchanging theories, Mara felt a profound sense of connection to the ancient humans who had placed these ships here. They had faced extinction with courage and foresight, preserving their knowledge and power, not for themselves, but for descendants they would never meet. Dr. Lin, Sentinel's voice addressed her privately, the AI having established a direct communication channel. There is something you should see, something only for the one who awakened the fleet. Mara glanced around, ensuring that the others were engrossed in their tasks before responding. What is it? The true legacy of the Founders, the AI replied cryptically. Follow the path. A subtle line of light appeared on the floor before her, leading away from the main chamber toward a section of wall that appeared solid and unremarkable. As Mara approached, however, the material shimmered and became transparent, revealing a small antechamber beyond. She hesitated only briefly before stepping through. The wall solidified behind her, and she found herself in a space that felt intimately scaled after the vast expanse of the ship bay. At its center stood a simple pedestal, and upon it, a crystalline sphere about the size of her palm. "What is this?" she asked, though some intuitive part of her mind already seemed to know. "The Nexus." Sentinel replied, its voice softer here. "A quantum entanglement key that links all 17 vaults scattered throughout your solar system. With it, you can access the complete knowledge of the first civilization, not just their technology, but their art, their philosophy, their understanding of themselves and the cosmos." Mara stared at the sphere in awe. "Why show this to me alone? Shouldn't this be shared with everyone?" "In time," the AI assured her. But the Founders were wise enough to know that some knowledge must be introduced gradually. The ships themselves represent power, tangible, immediately applicable power that humans instinctively understand how to channel. This, it indicated, the sphere, represents wisdom. It requires a different approach. As she reached out hesitantly toward the crystal, Mara understood. The ships had forced Earth and Mars to cooperate through a demonstration of overwhelming force, a language both sides recognized. But true unity, true advancement as a species, would require more than shared weapons or technologies. It would demand a shared vision, a common purpose that transcended planetary politics. "I'll help them understand," she promised, both to Sentinel and to the long-vanished Founders whose legacy now rested in her hands. When they're ready. The Founders believed their descendants would eventually surpass them. Sentinel replied, a note of something like pride in its artificial voice. "The seeds of their greatness remain within you, within all humans, waiting to be reawakened." Mara gently lifted the crystal sphere, feeling an immediate connection as it touched her skin. Images flashed through her mind, glimpses of magnificent cities that had graced Earth before the catastrophe, achievements that made humanity's current civilization seem primitive by comparison, and yet also the familiar struggles, passions, and dreams that defined the human experience across time. She saw, too, the ships that had been sent to distant stars, carrying the hope of humanity with them. Some had arrived safely, establishing colonies that might have grown into mighty civilizations of their own. Others had encountered something else, something the Founders had feared might one day find its way to Earth. The Vanguard fleet was not just a gift to humanity's future, she realized. It was a warning, a preparation for challenges yet to come, for choices yet to be made. As she stepped back into the main chamber, the crystal safely stored in a pouch at her belt, Mara watched Earth and Martian personnel working side by side, their previous hostilities temporarily set aside in the face of discovery. It was a fragile beginning, but a beginning nonetheless. Beyond the moon, beyond the tense politics of the Sol system, the greater galaxy awaited. Perhaps out there, human descendants from the ancient colony ships still existed. Perhaps other intelligences, friendly or hostile, had taken note of humanity's halting steps into space. Whatever awaited them among the stars, Mara took comfort in knowing they would face it with renewed understanding of who they were, not just Earth humans or Martian colonists, but inheritors of a legacy far grander and more ancient than any had suspected. The ships had slumbered for 100,000 years, guarding humanity's secret past. Now awakened, they would help forge humanity's shared future, a future that might finally fulfill the promise the founders had glimpsed before their civilization fell. As Dr. Mara Lynn gazed up at the gleaming vessels, she felt the weight of that responsibility and the exhilaration of possibility. Humanity's secret had been unleashed. What they made of it would determine not just the fate of Earth or Mars, but the destiny of the species itself. The ancient warships hummed with power, ready at last to fulfill their purpose. And humanity, reunited with its forgotten past, stood poised on the threshold of a future their ancestors had only dreamed might one day come to pass.